talking sport, and we're ready for the final quarter, and it is a panel discussion. And the moderator knows a thing or two about sports events and tourism, so that's good. Scott Hudson, CEO of the Western Sydney Wanderers, formerly working here at Panthers. He's a Western Sydney local, and he's been part of the Wanderers since 2013, taking over as commercial manager with responsibility across all commercial areas. Go the Wanderers. Adam Berry, Executive Director, Centres, Venues and Regions at the Office of Sport, big portfolio. Adam oversees and ensures the successful operation of 10 sport and recreation centres across New South Wales, including 6 Olympic sporting venues in Greater Sydney, and that includes the Regatta Centre and Whitewater here in Penrith. Welcome, Adam. And then finally, joining the stage will be Brian Fletcher, CEO of the Panthers Group, charged with running one of the community's largest employers with over 950 employees. Brian understands the importance of ensuring strong connections to the local community and has overseen significant growth in group revenue in the last period from $127 million in 2015 to 168 in forecasted. We'll see how you go. For 2024. Brian continues to build pathways for future growth in the sport and hospitality field. So thank you. Away you go, Stuart.
Thanks, Richard. Sport might well have been the first way we thought about tourism in Western Sydney and the way we thought about ourselves as a community, often the football team that we follow. And as the tourism and visitor economy narrative and discussion has evolved, I wondered whether sport had taken a bit of a backward seat. And so I think it's really important that we look at some of the sporting infrastructure and assets and organisations that we've got in our community to see how they can continue to drive that. Adam, I thought Mike Rodriguez would have the sharpest wheels in the room today for sure, but I think you've outdone him.
I'm the sports guy, right?
Yeah, indeed. Well, you've got to do that. But and Brian, I will take this opportunity to say thanks for hosting us. It's a wonderful facility. It was built here. Wouldn't have happened without the commitment of yourself and the board. It takes a bit of leadership to make that investment, and hopefully you look out on this crowd and see this infrastructure delivering exactly what you thought it would.
Just one thing on that, Stuart. I think Mark Webster was only looking out of his left eye.
Yeah, indeed.
He said
we need to pull back the other
he's got
wall.
a bigger place, conference centre than this. His holds 600, this holds 1,000. It's only half open.
No, very good. And Scott, I'm going to throw to you first. Wanderers, probably the youngest of the sporting brands in Western Sydney, has evolved relatively quickly. But I wanted to ask the question about how the Wanderers see themselves in Western Sydney as a brand and how they want to take a leadership position. Because that's, I think, a big part of how you drive sport into the visitor experience.
Yeah, 100%. I think part of how we started, and for those of you who don't know, we started about 12 years ago, 2012. And we had a really quick entry into being starting into the professional football in this country. We kind of were announced as a new franchise, and then literally 4.5 months later, we had to play our first game. So in that time, we had to create an identity. We literally were a blank piece of paper. We had to find a facility, sponsors, coach, administration, players, and then play our first game 4.5 months later. And I think the part of that process was the FA, which is the governing body of the game at the time, and also our owners at the time, once we established, was what they did was they went to the football community across the region and basically asked the community what club they wanted to be represented by. So the community got to kind of buy into the identity of the club that we became. They got to pick the colours, the name, where we should play, we should stand for. And I think part of that process kind of, there was 3 key things that we took away that we think about all the time in our business. And the first was the community asked us to be successful, both on and off the field. They also wanted to have great pride in a team, and I think our club has done a great job at giving this sense of pride and unity right across the region. And I know growing up myself in Blacktown, I didn't have that as a child, and I like to think our club has helped to kind of change the dynamic of how Western Sydney is perceived and the pride that people have within that as well. And also, and the last thing, which is kind of what you're talking about, was around the community asked us to stand up for them. So, although football is our core business and it is our sport and is what we play, we use it as a Trojan horse for driving other good things in the community. I know the Western Sydney Airport's been a discussion point today. Our brand and our business was part of the advocacy to government because we knew that would drive economic growth, prosperity, keep more jobs locally and improve the lives of the people of the region. So having that real kind of community engagement and community connection is something that's paramount to us in everything we do and still to this day.
And fundamentally, you're an event and experience business. You
100%.
put people on a green field to run around and kick a ball, but the people that are paying are going there for the event and the experience.
100%. And the thing that I love about sport, it's an outlet for people. Whether you're playing or watching, it's people engage with sport because they want to get away from their normal 9 to 5 lives.
Yeah.
So, and that's a real, when we look at it like that, it's a real privilege to be able to do that. So you look at a full stadium and you see multi-generational families, you see mum, dad, 2 or 3 kids, nan and pop. That gives us a great amount of joy that we can provide that outlet for people in their lives.
Yeah. Brian, I'm going to throw over to you. Rugby league, synonymous with the Panthers organisation, with the brand, where it stands in the community. It's been a pretty amazing period of time from an on-field success. How's that converted into business performance, the way you've responded to the community reacting to that, kind of beyond the scoreboard? Give us a bit of an insight to the financial impact beyond the scoreboard.
Yeah, well, Stuart, 5 years ago, we were in a sort of a pretty difficult situation. We weren't winning a lot of football games and we were changing coaches and so forth, and we made a very tough decision prior to 2020 and re-employed Ivan Cleary to come in as coach. From that day on, we didn't have a very good year the first year in 2019, as I think we were a little bit affected by the sex tapes, and after that we adjusted our business model over at the Rugby League Academy, and from then on the culture of bringing Ivan back and the culture he's instilled over there into the young players has now got to a level where it's outstanding. It's a very good business. 5 years ago, prior to that, for a decade, we lost 50 million on rugby league. We've now turned it into a real business. Last year we made 7 million out of rugby league. So, and we're treating it as a real business now to be less reliant on poker machines in our club going forward. So it's a good story to sell as well. But for last year, there was over 200,000 people attended the football at Penrith, and it was the same the year before. And I know we're lucky we're having success, and we've kicked off this season okay again. So, but it's been hard work to get there. The trick now is to keep it there, and being fortunate enough to, at the end of this year, that we build a new stadium and get better facilities and so forth. That's great for the Penrith district. And but we have a lot of people, like you talk about tourism. Last game we had, I had a family from Nyngan come down, 2 mothers with 5 children, travelled all the day, 7 hours from Nyngan to come and watch their kids love the Panthers. The game before, there was 3 families come from Tottenham. Like, our brand is scattered everywhere, and you don't need the best marketing people in Australia, but when you've got success, you still need good ones, but success it goes a long way to making the bottom line look attractive.
And 200,000 people coming through a venue. We've been talking about visitation numbers, people coming through future winter sports worlds, visitors to Scenic World. That's 200,000 visitors who are getting out of their house, going through cafes, through restaurants, through bars, clubs, that are all potential customers. So that's a great example of why sport's going to be right at the forefront of what happens in the visitor economy. Adam, you've got a really unique role in the Office of Sport. You manage a number of assets. We might keep it a little bit focused to Western Sydney.
Yeah.
And so why don't you just give people a bit of an insight to the assets that fit in your portfolio that are from the broader Western Sydney region?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Brian just talked about 200,000 people going through the stadium. We were just shy of that last year through the Regatta Centre. just down the road here, a couple of 100,000 people. So we have the International Regatta Centre and Penrith Whitewater Stadium. I'm not sure how many people are aware of that. Obviously, Stuart, you'd be very familiar with that, but the Office of Sport took over the Whitewater Stadium last year, and so we're now operating both of those venues, and they are quietly, almost by accident, playing a very significant role in the visitor economy here. And
No doubt.
And we see, I think the word of the day has been opportunity coming with Western Sydney Airport. Just over the summer we've just had, we had at the Whitewater Stadium alone, international athletes from 19 countries coming over, travelling, staying here. We actually had 12 Czech athletes here for 3 months. So that's very significant injection that's happening in an ongoing way, very quietly. But there's a real opportunity there for, I think, the operators and providers in this room to actually be more active and working with us and targeting those people and taking full advantage of the dollar that they can spend while they're here. So we definitely are there playing that role, but I think with the airport opening and also Australia hosting the next Olympic Games in 2032, those are both Olympic qualification venues. There will be people from the Northern Hemisphere looking to come to Penrith for the next 6 or 7 years to train, to qualify, particularly from Europe, because it's their off-season, is our summer season, and we're in full operation, and they can get down here and they can train in all those paddle sports. So there's a very significant 5-6 year window that I think in this room we can take advantage of.
Well, I'm going to touch on a few different parts of the infrastructure agenda, but Scott, I'm going to come to you because we often think of sport as just being in the stadium, but the Western Sydney Wanderers' home base at Blacktown is a pretty extensive community facility that has visitation and activity happening on a regular basis. Let's unpack that a little bit. What are you doing in that venue?
Yeah, we're very lucky in terms of the facility that we've got. We've got we're a different model than NRL. We're privately owned. We've got three private shareholders who have all done well out of Western Sydney. So they own our club and have done for 10 years because they see it as a gift back to the people. And when we designed our facility, we had a great partnership with Blacktown City Council. We've got a 11 hectare site in Blacktown, just on the M7, if you've ever driven past it. When we designed it, we wanted to ensure that it wasn't just a facility for high performance for our professional teams. We said, if we're a club that's highly connected to the community, how do we be a facility that the community can access? So with that came, it's obviously got to have a professional need to service our teams, both men's and women's, and pathways as well. But how do you create a hub that the community can kind of come together and kind of football can be the driving pillar that kind of brings them there? So we have 9 full-size pitches. We have a state-of-the-art five-a-side complex as well. So
How many pitches are in your five-a-side space?
our five-a-side space is on the envelope of 1 full field, but it has 9 individual pitches. We think this year, we only opened about 18 months ago. This year we'll probably have 200,000 visitors just to the five-a-side complex itself. So our role is to work with local clubs, run tournaments, work with different schools to stimulate that space to make sure the community can access it through a range of different programs and events and tournaments and whatnot.
And so this is a really good example of how to get a little bit beyond the stadium in the way we think about the visitor economy. You've got 200,000 people coming through your five-a-side pitches. Adam's managing a couple of assets here in Penrith. He's got a few others like the shooting centre, but 200,000 people going through those venues already. Brian's got a football team that's going through stadium across the road at 200,000. We're over 500,000 people who are interacting and visiting our community, or we can leverage from a visitor economy perspective. Scott, how's football and things like your five-a-side facility opened up opportunities in the multicultural space?
Yeah, I think you look at what Western Sydney is, and there's no secret to those in the room how culturally diverse it is. 190 different languages, a lot of growth coming into the region. A lot of that is from new migrant communities, and I think our advantage is that football is the global language that they're familiar with as well. So we really lean into multicultural engagement to create I think regardless of who you are, you want to feel part of something and you want a sense of community. So we really leverage, I guess, our facility to engage a lot of those core communities. As an example, we're in the middle of running a tournament on a Monday night for the last 6 weeks for Pacifica women around getting them more active and skill development, and we've got about 100 players that are part of that. But what's been created outside that is the local Pacifica community has kind of drawn to the event, and we've created this whole kind of night market atmosphere. So with 100 Pacifica women playing five-a-side football brings 2,000 people to the local area every Monday night, and parking is an absolute mess. You can't park anywhere, but I think that gives you an idea on, I guess, the appeal that football has, because I think from our perspective, it is the most inclusive sport there is. It's quite easy to play. It's low contact, no contact, and it engages a vast range of people. So for us, again, like if we're serious about being a club that is for the community, you have to allow the community to engage with the assets that you've created as well.
Adam, I reckon that's a great little segue for the question I was going to ask you next. How a football facility putting on some community football activities turns into a night market. The Cirque or the Regatta Centre, Whitewater, seen purely through a lens as sporting complexes. How do we think differently about those assets? Can we bring different events? Can we bring music, outdoor activities? They're assets owned by the public. Can we sweat them a little bit harder in other ways?
Yeah, we definitely need to, Stuart. One of the ways the asset, particularly the one Regatta and the Whitewater Stadium is used well by this community, is a parkland asset. There's a lot of people walk there, there's a lot of people cycle, there's a lot of recreational use, families picnicking, but that other use that's not necessarily sporting but that still brings the community together is definitely one that I'll put my hand up and say we haven't nailed that, we haven't maximised that. And I think the conversation earlier about attitudes to risk is certainly playing into that. And we've got to get more comfortable with trying to bring more diverse kind of events to public facilities.
And as a person who's responsible for that and engaged in the public service, what do you need from this type of community? Like, we're talking specifically about Cirque and Whitewater now, but if there is a loosening up of the attitudes around risk, how does that need to get communicated to you so you can be open to more options?
I think advocacy through government, through local members, through local council, through mayors who always have very strong views and represent those to government really strongly on what they want someone to do. So just that a really clear, I think Michael Rodriguez said it, that clear signal to the public service about, hey, we want to do more of this and we want to see more of that. Because we definitely want to see more value for Western Sydney out of all of our assets out here. And we do also have the Equestrian Centre at Horsley Park, the Shooting Centre at Cecil Hills. So we've got a number of big facilities, right, with large amounts of land, and land is not something Sydney has a lot of, that we should be trying to get more out of, definitely.
Brian, I reckon that's a nice little segue into something you have to talk about when you put a whole lot of sports administrators on a panel. The government's investing a large amount of money in a new stadium. A big part of that is having a diversity of events, but I'm sure a lot of people in the room would like to have an understanding of where it's at, what's the time frame, what's being built. Do you want to go through the kind of macros for the community?
We're well on the way of... we'll finish playing here, fingers crossed that we play the first semi here in September, and that's the finish. Then demolition will start immediately. I think we've got a 3-week window for people to come and unbolt their seats if they want them and so forth, and the sponsors to take their precious stuff out of their boxes and so forth. So it's on track. We met with the government officials, Infrastructure New South Wales. We meet monthly and then fortnightly, and we're allowing at the moment 2 years for it to be built, 26, but with weather permitting, it could be opened within 18 months, and we've asked the NRL to do the 2026 draw, that we play a lot of games away early and have a bit of a run-in coming home, so we might be able to get back here, say, in August and play the last 4 or 5 games back at Penrith and open it up, because it's a year that hopefully we'll be announcing that we'll have a women's competition as well. We've just had drawings done for a Demountable Academy over near the men's academy out the back there for the ladies. We'll be putting in a team in the Harvey Norman next year on our progression to get there. We have applied to go in early. We've had no luck. I don't know whether the NRL thought we'd be too strong out here with the amount of ladies that do play football from here in other sides as well. And I'm sure they'd come back and play for Penrith once we get a side. So,
And when it's completed, there's some changes to the administration. It's going to be managed by Venues New South Wales as opposed to a venue that's been operated by Panthers historically.
yeah, well, we've had the lease there for the last 20 odd years, and it's Crown land managed by the council. Yep. Now with the government giving us $300 million to build something, well, naturally they want to own it, which is not a problem, and we'll go there and play all our games there, and still play one in Bathurst, but the rest of it will be played at the Penrith Stadium. I think in 25 we're taking a game to Mudgee, we're taking a game to Bathurst, one to Las Vegas and one to the Magic Round. And the following year we'll go to the Magic Round, Bathurst and Mudgee, and play 9 and the other games at Combank. So hopefully we have a bit of luck with the weather and we get back here sooner than later. It's a big build, there's a lot of things we've got to do with membership and so forth, and it's going to put a big hole in our budget not playing here, because fortunately at the moment we sell every game out, like there's 20 odd thousand going there, and you talk about tourism and that, you cannot get a room any day or night we play football in Penrith, in the Penrith district, any accommodation.
As a takeout of that comment, I think we've spoken a lot about collaboration and coordination. You're going to see a disruption to an existing market that I think does require a bit of work across the community, from council, Panthers, about what are you going to put into the Penrith community as an example to backfill into some of those markets. So I think that's a good take out of the lesson. I just want, last thing on the stadium, you now become the CEO of an adjoining business next to a stadium operated by the government. How are you thinking about the events beyond football that are going to go into into that?
We'd love to have as many events as possible there, because we've just built this. We spent $121 million here building the conference centre and the Pullman Hotel. So I'd love to have an event there twice a week. Like, it'd be great. It'll pay this off quickly. So, and it was the idea of building this as well. They're looking to the future to say, with the new stadium coming on board and so new airport, and I wouldn't be surprised, and I won't be here in those days, but a few years' time, that you'll be building another Pullman on the other end of the car park.
Scott, the Western Sydney Wanderers, what's next for them in their trajectory? How are they going to continue to take a leadership role and be a bigger participant in the Western Sydney economy?
Yeah, I think we were lucky we moved into a new stadium at Combank in 2019, and then kind of COVID hit. So it's taken us a little while to kind of get back on our feet. So I think, ultimately filling our stadium more regularly. We kind of have this weird dynamic where our Sydney Derby is the hottest thing in town with 30,000 people, but then our average crowd outside of that is a little bit off that. So I think we've got a great asset there. So how do we really use our leverage and positioning and the population at a grassroots level to fill the stadium ultimately, and then fill our facility. And I think something that's really important to us is the work we're doing with our Wanderers Foundation, which is our registered charity. So like I said before, football is an extremely inclusive sport. It kind of doesn't matter who you are, what your gender is, your level of ability. There's, for us, our role is to help more people play a sport that they love. So how can we leverage the business community, leverage our partners with government, leverage people that have done well out of business to help fund a lot of the fee-free stuff we do in the academy. So I think that's an important part, is essentially filling our assets, filling the things we have, but then also serving the community to essentially keep them active, healthy, and uniting with each other as well.
So I think it's been a great reminder of the power of sport as a foundation stone for the visitor economy. The numbers that you've all spoken about going through venues, Adam, it's really exciting to hear Office of Sport wanting to kind of open up those facilities to different types of events, and an invitation from the community to talk to you and talk to government about what risk appetite looks like for different types of events. Brian's lucky enough to be engaged in an organisation that's getting a new facility and winning games. And I think from your perspective, Scott, you've invested in an amazing community facility. You've already started to showcase how that's having a profound impact on the visitor economy, and I think sport's going to be a big part of that narrative. My final message to you three guys is that we've spoken a lot about packaging and tour operations, making sure that you are part of that conversation as well. Your product is as much available to those people coming into the community, and packaging up with other operators also allows your brand to get out and be engaged in them as well. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I like those numbers, actually. 200,000. It was 200,000 at the beach, 200,000 at Panthers, 200,000 at Whitewater and Regatta. We're going to have playoffs. And
We're already over 1 million.
Get to 1 million, yes. But thank you.